you're leaving thousands of dollars on the table and you might not even realize it. How fast you close your claims, incomplete and inaccurate estimates, and low customer satisfaction don't just create extra work for you and everybody else, they crush your momentum and your income. Most adjusters try to fix this by working longer hours at night, but that just leads to burnout and 3 a.m. estimate sessions where they're just winging it. Some adjusters jokingly call making up measurements in the middle of the night adjusting. The truth is, if you want to make the most money while you're deployed and still get a full night's sleep every single night, you need a system that handles it all on site in real time and with confidence. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you how to build in this video. We'll cover how closing claims on site boosts accuracy and slashes your corrections, why it's the fastest path to getting on the first call list with carriers and your IA firms, and how to avoid the claim pileup that takes out most new adjusters. And this is the exact workflow I use to survive and thrive through more than 20 years of catastrophe and daily property claims deployments. And when you see how it works step by step, it'll change the way you handle claims forever. I'm Matt with Adjuster TV, and this is how top adjusters hit their income goals without burning out on their first storm. This video, which is a replay of my weekly live stream for my Fast Track students, will take you from staying up all night and struggling to keep your claims closed to getting a full night's sleep and closing more quality claims than ever. Okay, quick question. Have you ever wondered why some new adjusters take off fast while others never even get a single claim? We're breaking that down in a live masterclass this Wednesday, May 21st at 1 p.m. Central. If you're serious about making this career work, you need to be there. Save your seat right now by snapping this QR code or going to adjustertv.com/claims. Okay, now on to how to close claims on site. So let's talk about why in the world would we want to do this, aside from what I just said. The major benefits of closing on site, besides getting a good night's sleep and me arguing that it's faster, is it's also more accurate, okay? And that should be pretty easy to understand because you're at the house still. And while you're writing up your estimate or you're importing and labeling your photos, you forget a photo, you don't have a measurement that you need in order to finish the estimate, you're at the house. So you don't have to guess or adjust, right? This is the running joke for as long as I've been in this industry. Oh, well, 4 days later at 2 o'clock in the morning, you don't have all the measurements, you got wrong, missing measurements. You just adjust, which just means make it up. Don't do that, okay? It's accurate as far as like your measurements of things. So like if, for number of squares on the roof, number of square feet on siding, number of linear feet on baseboard, all that stuff. It's going to be compared to apples to the QA's estimate that they do, because they basically what QA does, and this is the carrier that does this, is they will audit 2 or 3 of your files, and they'll go back out to the house and they'll scope it and write up an estimate based on the estimating guidelines, and then they'll compare yours to theirs, right? That's what QA does. You're going to be a lot closer to QA because you're not making up measurements, right? And with the contractor, right? So you're not going to be, the contractor's got 32 squares on the roof and you have 21. Well, how did that happen? You made stuff up because you didn't get all the measurements, right? And that's significant, and that becomes a customer service problem, right? Not to mention the fact that you're probably going to see that contractor more than once, and he's going to think that you're not very good at this. All right, if you're making real money as an adjuster, don't leave your career exposed. Errors and omissions and general liability insurance from Kaplik is designed just for you, and it might even be cheaper than what you're already paying. Snap this QR code right here or visit cplic.net/adjustertv to grab the free guide and lock in smarter protection today. Better cycle time. I think it's faster. The speed thing feeds into the cycle time, obviously. Because you are closing the file the same day that you scope it, right? And this is like a express version of don't inspect any more than you can reasonably close that same day. This is doing that at the house instead of later on at the hotel, right? That does wonders for your your cycle time, which is one of the main metrics that they, that they hold you to as an adjuster. Again, the customer service piece, if you can, even if you're, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but we're going to assume that you're doing the full claim. You're working for State Farm or Allstate or somebody like that, some major company that are like, hey, we want you to write checks, tabletop settle, all that kind of stuff. If you can give the insured a number, a coverage decision and a number, like a total on your estimates before you leave the house, or call them, if they don't happen to be there, call them and give them a number. Hey, grand total for this is $226,000, and you'll get that first check in the mail, 7 to 10 business days, blah, blah, blah. Stuff the copy of the estimate into your, under your doormat or in your, inside your storm door or whatever you did, right? Or you hand it to them. That's A+, top shelf, gold star, best practices, customer service. Every carrier wants you to do that. And I say there, that last point, carriers prefer it. This is what carriers make their staff adjusters do. Okay, so if you can do what they do, which is to close on site, because they recognize that handing a check to the insured, making that coverage decision, being able to look them in the eye when you deny them, whatever, that you got to do, that is by far the best customer service in the carriers. If you show up and you start doing that, you're going to get on the first call list, because that's the carriers keep the first call list, as you probably heard me say before. And this is one of the things that really gets their attention if you're closing on site. Early calibration, right? So in other words, instead of going and scoping, and this is something that is covered basically in Fast Track, instead of going out and scoping 5 or 6, we'll say 6, day one, and then writing up 3, most of the way, and then scoping 6, and then getting snowballed. You do 1 or 2 or 3 day one, and you turn those in like they uploaded while, maybe you got your hotspot on, or you go to the coffee shop, which again, we'll talk about that later as well. You upload those before you go back to your hotel, and file review can get their hands on it and look at your files. And if you do that early enough, you're going to be, not everybody is going to be turning in files day one. The file reviewers and the managers and the help room people and all those people aren't going to have a whole lot to do day 1 and 2 and 3, because everybody's going to be out scoping like crazy. And then they're all going to have panic attacks because they don't know how to write their estimates. And then they're going to pile in to help rooms, and then they're going to upload 15 claims at a time, and the 15 claims are all wrong, right? You want to turn in 1, 2, or 3, get those checked, and then you're not making the same errors, silly basic errors like you forgot the header or wrong price list or whatever, dumb stuff, right? On claims 4 through 50, right? You're going to have other errors, but this is going to reduce your errors, your kickbacks, which waste time, right? So anytime you have corrections, especially for silly things that you should have caught with a self-file review, you're basically just throwing money out the window.
Being a great adjuster isn't just about policy and software. You got to know the difference between hail damage and worn-out shingles. Hague has the gold standard books and certifications to back you up in the field or at the desk. Scan the QR code or hit hagueeducation.com and use Adjuster TV for a discount and level up with Hague.
Step 1, how do we do this, right? In the very beginning, one of the very first things that you do after you download your file, or after you set up Xactimate and download your files, you're going to do your claims recon, right? You want to use that not just to say, have an expectation of, oh, that's a big house, I'm going to need a 2-story ladder when I go out and look at it, or it's cut up or whatever, but also to tell you how long you're going to be at the house, right? After you have made all your first contacts, and you are in the process of inputting all this stuff into Xactimate, right? I tell you to put your grouping tree in there at that time, right? But also, we're ordering an Eagle View, right? We're going to do things, long story short on this, we're going to do things before we even get to the house. We're going to take that claim as absolutely as far as we can whenever we're in it, right? Which means if there's a lot of siding damage, if we think there's going to be a lot of siding damage and the roof and everything else, Maybe we text a hover link to the insured if we're allowed to use hover. They give us hover to use, right? And then the insured goes around and takes 8 photos of their house that night or the next morning or whenever before you get there. And hover does their magic. And then you get all the measurements for the house, including the roof on the outside of the house, everything before you get to the house. And now that saves you from having to run your tape over here and run your tape over there and draw diagrams and everything. You want to ground truth things. You want to double check measurements and stuff, but that could save you half an hour right there, just not having to measure everything and draw diagrams. Does that make sense? You can also draw sketches from Google Earth. If you've already run some claims in this particular neighborhood and you're like, man, these roofs are up, they're all smashed. Everybody's got 2 elevations of siding, window wraps, screens, gutters and downspouts, blah, 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 right? Well, you get a new claim in that area, or you get 10 new claims in that area, and you've scheduled them and everything, and now you're going to go status them. Drop those macros in there. Put the macro into the grouping tree. If you're like, this house that I'm looking at here, this new claim is between 2 houses that I totaled the roofs on, and the hail hits are that big, and the siding is hanging off in shreds, right? I'm putting the macros in. I'm going to start. I don't have to put anything else in there, right? And I may have to change that. I certainly have to change that, but I'm going to start writing the estimate before I even get to the house, right? Same thing with the GLR. Get that stuff started, kind of partially filled out. Again, schedule your field days to make this easy. This goes back to first few lessons of FTD. We're not going to scope or inspect any more than we can reasonably close that same day. So, and then this case, if you figure out after a few days or a week or two and you're not going to do this right out of the gate. I should have said this at the very beginning. They probably won't let you, they won't let you settle up with the insured right out of the gate as a new adjuster. They're going to want to put you through some authority and, double checking your work and everything else. But we say you get to that point, right? And you know that it's going to take you 40 minutes to scope a typical house and another 45 minutes or an hour or whatever it is to write the estimate, import and label the photos, do the diary, do the GLR, do the claim summary, do the statement of loss, all that stuff, right? 2-hour block, right? You could probably do it in less than that, but you're going to give yourself 2 hours to do that. Just make your schedule to where you're doing 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, right? And by the end of that day, you've got 4 closed claims, right? I can't emphasize this enough. We're there to close claims, right? And the faster we can do it, the more accurately we can do it, the better. One thing, and I'm going to kind of hammer on this a little bit, at the minimum, no matter what, give yourself enough time at each house to import and label the photos and do your inspection diary entry if they're having you do that, right? However they're having you do that, documenting your inspection. Do that while you're still at the house. In particular, for the diary entry, it will status your file and it pings exact analysis and it says that it's inspected. Manager can look in there if he needs to, or whoever, right? Insured calls in for something, not to you, but to your manager somehow. Oh, well, he was there actually, and he did get on the roof. And actually, I'm looking at the photos right now. I'm looking at the picture from the very top of your roof. So he did actually get up on your roof, right? That helps your manager. You get your managers back, let's put it that way, in that circumstance, right? But as far as the photos go, again, this goes back to the accuracy part, right? If you're importing and labeling your photos, you're going to know what photos you need to have in this file. And if you get to where the right elevation or the left elevation photos should be, and there aren't any photos for the left elevation, then you know that you forgot it, right? For whatever reason, the neighbor's dog was really super adorable, and you spent 2 minutes petting the neighbor's dog over the fence and talking to the neighbor, right? And you just totally spaced doing the left elevation. Whatever reason it is, right? You're still at the house. Jump out, go get those photos, right? This makes a complete file because you can't adjust that 4 days later at 2 o'clock in the morning. If you don't have the photos for something and you put it into your estimate, you're going to get gigged on that sooner or later by QA, right? It's going to cause problems for you. So you want to have a complete set of photos that back up what you're writing. You want to have a complete set of photos that are required by the carrier, right? And 99% of the time they want overview shots at the minimum of all four sides of every building that's on the property. And if you're missing those, then your QA is going to gig you. Later on, if you have to go back and look at that, maybe the file reopens for a supplement or a reinspection, and it's all about the left side of the house, and maybe you looked at it, but you didn't get photos of it. You're going to forget 2 weeks later anything at all about that house, or any detail anyway. And you're going to go to look at the photos, and they're not going to be there. And so you're absolutely going to have to go back out and look at it versus looking at the photos and being going, oh, you know what? Here's actually only got 3 windows on that side. I don't know why you have 7 window wraps on the left elevation, right? You just help yourself out by doing it right the first time. But at the minimum, the whole point of this slide, import and label photos. Note that I said import and label, not just import. Import and label the photos, because that makes you go through each and every one to put a label on it, right? And then do your inspection diary so that will stop the clock on your inspection cycle time metric. But to fully close the claim on site, you're going to write the estimate right after you do the diary and the photos. Complete your narrative GLR, whatever sort of like summary you got to do. That's like the big things that some of them make you do. Complete the damage evaluation, claim summary, and invoice. If you happen to be at the house when you do all this and you're allowed to, you've been authorized to, you can go settle with the insured, and then you can put that diary entry in. I combine the two, right? My inspection activity diary entry is also my settling up entry, or both into one, right? So it's the detail, who I met with at the time, phone numbers and all that kind of stuff, the details of what we found, kind of in broad strokes. And then instead of saying, explain next steps and set expectations, blah, 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 settled with insured, explained estimate, depreciation, deductible, mortgage company, answered questions, blah, 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 so on and so forth, right? Negotiated with the contractor if they happen to be one there, and you get an agreed scope. You get an agreed scope and pricing with the contractor on site, and you've saved everybody an infinity level of work. So step 3, you want to really optimize your time at the house, right? And again, we talk about this in the training, scoping order and the system that you use, right? Starting at the top and working your way down as you're going around the house, how you're taking your photos, where you're standing to take your photos, all that stuff are key, right? You want to build your scope sheet in the same order that you're going to write your estimate so that you can get into Xactimate and just, here's your scope sheet and here's Xactimate, right? You just, first thing, type that in. Second thing, type that in. You just go down the list, right? You can take a pencil and check them off as you go, right? In particular for the exterior, also for the interior, if you don't use Xactimate Mobile, you might think, oh, there's no way I can do that because I don't even know what those are. After your first 2 weeks of doing, especially on a hailstorm, and you've closed 15 or 20 claims, you're going to have these things memorized where you'll be dreaming about them, right? So the category and selector codes, write your scope in those, right? RFG 300S, RFG felt, whatever, right? So on and so forth. RFG, ARM, write those out because that makes it even easier. It takes less brain to like sit there and go, what's the line item for that again? Or the name or whatever it is. All you got to do is just transcribe your scope notes straight into Xactimate with the measurements and dimensions and all that kind of stuff. And then boom, check mark, you're done with that. Now we're going to do the gutters and downspouts, SFG, GUTG, right? They're galvanized, plus PNT, whatever paint gutters is, so on and so forth, right? All the way on down the line. Okay, does that make sense? This is a key sort of like trick to being able to close claims quickly, close claims on site, and make it your estimate a lot more accurate. Obviously, like I said, you're not going to have this stuff memorized right out of the gate, but you will very soon. Okay, it's like driving a stick. Do the same thing on the interior, right? Water spot on the ceiling. You don't really need to use Xactimate Mobile, right? Even if you've got 4 rooms and they all have one water spot on the ceiling, I don't know that I'm going to bother with that, right? Laser, beep off the rooms. You're not really doing anything with the walls if the water spot's right in the middle of the ceiling. Get your photos, 12 by 13, it's son's bedroom, 12 by 13, and write them out, right? PNT S, and then write out 10 square feet. PNT P, right? For paint. And then C is the calculation for the ceiling, right? It's super easy. Or WC for walls and ceiling. DRY 1/2 for the, 10 square feet for the repair. INS, whatever it is for bad insulation, 10 square feet for that, right? Write it on your piece of paper. If you have a larger loss, if you got sewer and drain backup or water losses and things like that, where you're going to be like, there's a lot of line items that you have to do for each room, then 100% I'm going to use Xactimate Mobile. I say this all the time, but this is a total game changer. If I had it when I was doing claims, I just didn't have it. I had to do other things. I had to bring my laptop into the room with my laser, get the measurements, build a sketch right there, drop a macro on, tweak it, and then go to the next room. I'm going to tell you, if you're going to do this, use Xactimate Mobile. The power of this is you're getting your dimensions and the sketch at the exact same time, and then there's no reason why you can't drop a macro right onto Xactimate, onto whatever that room is. When you build macros in Xactimate, if you didn't know this, when you sync it up with Xactimate Mobile, all your macros are going to be in Xactimate Mobile. You don't have to build them again on Xactimate Mobile, right? That would be a huge pain in the rear end. Use those macros. You can even take pictures in Xactimate Mobile. That's a workflow thing that you probably have to fiddle with, whether it's faster to do snapshots with your snapshot camera and the SD card, or if it's going to be faster for you to use Xactimate Mobile, I'll leave that one to you to figure out. If you can get all that, if you can get the measurements, the sketch, the estimate items, and get photos at the minimum, and even label them, because you can label them in Xactimate Mobile. If you can get all 4 of those things before you leave that room, then you're done in that room, completely done in that room, right? And that also saves you time in importing and labeling photos later in your estimate, right? You go to the next room, you got 5 rooms. By the time you get done with the 5th room, then you're done with the whole estimate, including the photos, except for the exterior photos, right? It's a big deal. Because, when we talk about large loss claims, those are the technology that we have these days makes those a lot easier. Step 4, make sure that your gear is dialed, right? You got batteries, you're not going to have to stop everything and run over to 7-Eleven to get some AAA batteries or whatever for your camera. You got an SD card that's got plenty of space on it and a backup in case that first SD card gets corrupted somehow. You got chargers for everything, including your phone, your camera. You got batteries for your laser, etc. Right? If you're printing and handing out estimates on site, if you're authorized to do that, and if you are, I would strongly recommend that you work up to that and try to make that a goal to be able to hand the insured a printed estimate. Make sure you got printer paper, printer ink. Even if you aren't authorized to do coverage, make a coverage decision and go over numbers and hand out the estimate to the insured, I'd still bring that along in case I run out of handouts, because they'll always have some kind of handout for you to give to the insured, like a little sheet that says, the claims process, the recovery begins, right? And that's, what is a deductible? What is a this? What is that? And here's, so on and so forth. You can print those out and write your phone number on it, write your email or your toll-free number or whatever you want to do. Give that to the insured while you're at the house. Because if you run out of them, QA is going to ask the insured if you handed them anything, right? And what they're looking for is if you handed them the handouts that they give everybody. They want you to give those handouts out. So if you have the capability to print them, after you run out of the ones you got from the orientation or the induction center, it saves you from having to go do that, to drive all the way back over to the induction center to get more of those particular supplies. Cougar paw pads, all your gadgets are charged up, right? Your vehicle is set up in such a way that you can get into it, go to an insured's house, and everything is where it's supposed to be for you to be able to handle a claim. That's something that you kind of have to figure out on your own, how you want to optimize all that stuff. printer in the back seat, printer in the front seat, printer sitting on a little box, printer not sitting on a box, printer on the floor, your supplies in a box behind the passenger seat, your supplies in a box in the front seat, wherever you want to put them that makes sense for you. But they always need to be things, once you sort of like decide where things need to or should go, that's where they should always go, so that you always can, it's almost like you don't even have to look to pull out a sheet or to find it or whatever it is, right? Spare pencils, just reach down in that box back there, grab another pen or whatever it is, right? With a 13 pocket file folder that we use, right, that I teach you guys how to use, which again, this is training wheels. You can do whatever you want to. That's just a way to do it that I found to be the easiest. Just sidebar really quick. If you go through your first storm or two using that and you're like, you know what, I have another way I want to do this, I think it'll be better for me, do it. Okay. But the reason why I use that, one of the reasons why I use that 13 pocket file folder thing with the little lit flap on it instead of the big file box is because I can stick that little folder into my computer bag with my computer, just slide it in there and throw my computer bag on. I'm in and out, right? And depending on the kind of vehicle you have, but a lot of vehicles that have just bucket seats in the front seat, between the left side of the passenger seat and the center console, if you happen to have that, sometimes you can jam, and all the vehicles I had, I could jam my 13 pocket file folder in there with the lid open, and my files stood up so that they're right there. Right. Next file, this one, right? Okay, it's Smith, whatever. I'm going to put the address in my phone and zip onto that next one, right? And I can look and see what's next. I can even flip through. Oh, looks like I'm going to do it. Well, I'll change it, after the third one today, right? That's a good place to have it. It's instead of having it on the floor where it's, I don't know, it's just a little small things, right? For photo and scope stuff, obviously, you're not going to be always doing full claims, right? There's going to be, I think, especially these days, there are a lot of opportunities, and I strongly recommend that you take any ones that you can, no matter what, right? No matter what they pay. For photo and scope only, right? Where maybe you're not even writing the estimate, I'm going to strongly recommend that whatever you have to do to be done with that particular file, you do it while you're still at the house, right? At the minimum, you don't have to sit there and wait an hour for whatever to upload because you got a kind of sketchy cell service, but at least get it started. Everything that you're supposed to do in the Subtle Assist or whatever, LiveGenics, I don't know what the apps are these days. Everything that you got to do, if you have to label photos, label them. Don't wait till later and, after dinner while you're sitting there watching TV to do that stuff. Go to bed after that, right? Probably not nearly as many things to do with that, but whatever you can do, especially if, the third thing or the third sort of method that they have of you doing this is that you go photo and scope and write the estimate, but they don't allow you to settle up with the insured or say what you found or tell them any numbers or anything like that. I'm still going to sit there in the driveway and write that thing up. I'm going to import and label my photos, and I'm going to write the estimate. I'm going to write my diary, and then whatever, invoice, whatever I have to do with that. And then I'm going to hit complete and be done with it before I leave the house, right? One thing I want to add back here for under the accuracy thing, insured finds damage while you're there. The number of times I've gone to the insured's house, gone up to the front door as soon as I pull up, and gone through my little spiel, and then said, I asked them this on the phone before, during our first contact, was there any damage to the inside of the house, any personal property that was damaged that you know of, right? No, I don't think so. I think it was just the roof. We just weren't concerned. The neighbors and the roofer came by and blah, 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 right? When I get to the house for the inspection, I'm going to ask that question again, right, as part of my spiel. I'm going to say, I know I asked you this on the phone, but since the last time we talked, did you guys happen to notice that if there was any damage to the inside of the house or any personal property in the yard, grill cover, patio furniture, dog dishes, garden gnomes, whatever, right? No, I still don't think so, right? You're sitting out in front of the house, you finished the whole scope, right? And you imported your labeled your photos, you wrote the estimate for everything that you had on your scope sheet, and you're writing the diary, and you hear, and you look up, and you get the air conditioner on full blast and you roll your window down. Mr. Insured, hey, listen, we actually did notice that there was a water stain on the ceiling in the linen closet upstairs. We got to thinking about it. And we thought, well, we hadn't really looked in a couple of the closets and blah, 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 right? Great. Grab your camera, grab your clipboard, jump out and go get photos of that, get your measurements of whatever room it is, and then come back, add it to the estimate, and away you go. It saves you a reinspection and a supplement, right? These kinds of things, again, save you so much time. Anytime you have to do a reinspection, you're getting paid once to do the work twice. Okay, so you have to go back to the house for any reason. Sometimes it's unavoidable, certainly. But if you can avoid it by doing this, don't go. This drives me crazy. People say, don't let things go to voicemail, which I totally disagree with. And they say, hey, when you get done at the house, go ahead and import and label your photos and write the estimate. But, pull out and drive around the corner so that the insured can't see you. No, don't do that. I want to sit there at the house because I want to be able to have them come up and knock on the window. Because that's what they're trying to avoid is the insured come up and knocking on the window and saying, oh, by the way, I found something else. Because I don't really have to go back to the house, right? Plus, if I can settle up with them, I'm there. I don't have to now schedule a phone call to when I was just right there with them, okay? So many things. Anytime you have to touch the phone, it adds years to your life. Money just flies right out of your pocket. We get kind of worked up about this. Being prepared, having repeatable systems are what makes this possible. First steps to doing this, obviously you're not going to probably do this right out of the gate. It's totally fine. But you can start easing into it by, again, at the minimum, try to, from the first claim, the very first claim that you ever handle on your big hurricane, very first one you go to, I create that schedule so that you can do stuff like this, right? So that you've got room. You're not in a frantic panic to scramble around and do a gazillion things, right? You're going to do one claim first thing, 9 o'clock in the morning on Monday or Tuesday or whatever day it is, right? Take your time, import and label all your photos. If you took them out of order a little bit, you got some time to rearrange them, and then write your inspection diary note, and then go take that to the help room to finish up writing the estimate if you need that help, right? Try to make that a habit from the very first claim that you do. You'll come to find out that people gripe and complain about how it takes 2 hours to import and label photos, and I hear all kinds of things. First of all, people are taking too many photos, right? We want to tell the story of the claim, no more, no less, right? And it doesn't take 300 pictures on a hail claim or even a basic wind claim, right? 40, 60 maybe, the most. Import and label your photos, do your diary while you're at the house, and just make that a habit, and always give yourself time to do that. Try to make the right thing easy and the wrong thing hard, right? And in this case, the wrong thing is getting into your hotel room with a pile of work to do from that day. You want to get those claims closed that day. And your plan is, well, the sun went down, so I can't climb roofs, so all I can do is write estimates, right? There's nothing but distractions in your hotel room, right? Even if you didn't bring anything with you, there's TV, there's, phone calls with the spouse, there's dinner, right? It was a particularly brutal day. You can take a shower or a bath, right? If you get a hotel room with a bathtub in it, it makes it hard to get back into work mode in your mind, right? If you instead, after your last inspection, don't go back to your hotel, right? Maybe you go ahead and you get something to eat, but you go to Chili's, right? Take your laptop and the 3 claims or whatever it was that you did with you into the restaurant. And you're going to be by yourself, right? I can't tell you the number of dinners I've had by myself with my laptop, right? Thousands. Nobody gives a crap, right? Nobody notices you. If you're all worried about looking like a loser because you're eating dinner by yourself, you're working your ass off and you're making a bunch of money. So who's the loser, right? Eat your healthy salmon and broccoli dinner, right? And your sparkling water, whatever it is, and finish everything up. Go to coffee shops and do this. Coffee shops tend to close at 6, depending on the coffee shop, I guess. Panera, whatever, right? I want to try to get all that stuff done before I go back to my hotel room. There's still going to be a few things that I have to do back in my hotel room, but it's not going to be a night of writing up estimates, right? If you think you're going to be up until 1 o'clock in the morning, obviously you can't sit there at Chili's until they close. I mean, you can sit there at Chili's until they close, but you can't sit there until 1 o'clock in the morning because they're not open until 1 o'clock in the morning. Tweaking your schedule for the next day, right? Well, it was too late to call these people back that I wrote the estimates for from the ones I looked at today. So I'm going to make it on a piece of paper by itself, after my second appointment. I've got, I'll have plenty of time here. I'm going to slide this in between first and second appointment tomorrow. Call Jennifer Johnson at this number to explain, estimate, the grant, and I'll write the grand totals and everything and the deductible and depreciation and a mortgage company in that note on that piece of paper. And I might write a couple of them on there if it's like, if I've got time to do two or three settlement calls. If I do that, which is rare. So, because I was always doing it at the house, but then you slide it in for the next day. You're doing those kinds of things, corrections, right? After you get back to your hotel room, because you're not just going to get back to your hotel room and have nothing to do except write estimates. You might have phone calls. You're definitely going to have corrections. You're going to want to plan things for your next day. So it's a lot more than just inspections, writing estimates, inspections and writing estimates repeat over and over day after day. It's all kinds of other little things that come in and hijack your time. Kind of an advanced maneuver, but the earlier you start it, the better. On my very first storm, and this is one of the reasons why I made this a habit and did all 99% of my claims this way. My very first storm, was a State Farm storm. The cool thing back then, I don't know if they do it now, but State Farm had trainers. They were called RTs. They were re-inspector/trainer. And their job was to go out and do re-inspections with IAs or do them on their own, and also to train up new IAs. The very first things, one of the very first things that they told me right out of the gate was Matt, you want to work up to closing on site, settling, writing a check. And when you drive away from the house, there's nothing else to do in that file. And they taught me how to do it. And I didn't do it for a little while. And that's why I almost got kicked off that storm, because I started getting overscoped. And then I just had estimates that weren't written yet, just starting to pile up. And turned that around by really, really concentrating and focusing on closing on site. And this, mind you, no AI, no, Xactimate was just barely a thing, right? So I had Xactimate to write the estimate. I'm not like one of those super old school guys that had a price list stuck in his back pocket. But it was a paper file, right? I had to handwrite the diary. I had to handwrite the claim summary and the statement of loss. I had to take Polaroid, put pictures, right? Stick it in your pocket, write the label on it and stick it in your pocket. Hopefully it stays in the order that you took it, and then staple those on a photo sheet. It was just imagine trying to do that. And I was able to close 8, 10 of those a day, hail claims. So it's a system. Being prepared. I wanted to not be on storm site any longer than I needed to be, and I wanted to make it absolutely as much money as possible while I was there. And so I was highly incentivized to find ways to be as efficient as possible to close those claims. And when the paper file stuff went away and we went all digital, it was even better. And other adjusters complained about, oh, well, you're making us put 1 million F9 notes in there, and you're just killing us with the compliance and yada, yada, yada. Meanwhile, I'm out. Compliance thing, great, fine. I'll just work it into my workflow and keep going, right? Because I had done stapling pictures on a piece of paper, handwriting the photo labels, right? It's not faster than the computer, I promise you. But I made it work. I made it to where it was as fast as possible. So anything that they could cram down our throats as far as the computer stuff goes, again, the compliance, the check boxes, the fill out this form, fill out that form, send an email to whoever. It just becomes part of your workflow, and just is just a checkbox that you tick off, and you just do it. Being able to go to sleep at night without being up till 3 o'clock in the morning every single night and getting 2 hours of sleep. It can't be overstated, the importance of getting a good night's sleep, especially in a high stress kind of deal like this. And when you have your system down right, and you have all of the things are in their buckets, right? Where you don't have to think about them. You don't have open loops. Like if you've got an open loop, basically would be if you just got 6 new claims and you're not finding the time to get those scheduled, contacted, and into your schedule, right? Those are an open loop, and those are going to just nag at you and really, really cause a lot of, you may not even realize that that's causing that much stress, but it just elevates your sort of adrenal, your cortisol and your adrenaline and all that kind of stuff, which is stress response, right? Those things there's a time and place for those to be handled. They go right in there, and now it's out of your brain. That open loop is closed, and the anxiety level just flatlines, right? It's a wonderful feeling to be standing in the middle of all that chaos and being just calm, right? It's the eye of the storm, right? You're always in the eye of the storm if you have your systems and you have your preparation nailed, right? And you prioritize things, and everything has a place, and everything goes in its place. As soon as it comes in, right, it gets organized to where it needs to go, and then forgotten about until you get to that part of your schedule, right? And that's the beauty of the paper schedule is also this. They're having any kind of a schedule, really. So Greg's question, will new adjusters be able to close on site? The answer is yes. So if you go with a company that allows IAs to close on site, right out of the gate, no, they're not going to let you do that. What they're going to do is you're going to be on kind of like a probationary period where they'll give you 30 claims, right? But you build out your schedule and do everything, like do all that stuff, right? And you start going and doing your inspections, and they may say your first half a dozen, right? 5, maybe 10 claims. Your manager, if you have a site managed storm and you've got a team manager, there's a bunch of team managers, and every one of them's got 15 or 20 adjusters. You may turn your file straight into him or her and have them review it and say, okay, it looks good, or you know what, you forgot this or that or the other thing. So they might be like your file reviewer right out of the gate. So you're not going to be authorized to do anything with the insured while you're at the house, right? Because you're going to finish up at the house and then send this to your manager, who then will say, okay, you've got authority for $12,500, call them back and settle up with them, right? And then you got to find time in your schedule, call that person back, and then have the settlement conversation, right? Do half a dozen of those, and you have 0 on-site settlement authority, right? So you can't tell the insured any number until it's been approved by your manager, right? So that's step 1, or step 0, you could say. The next level above that is that they would give you $5,000 worth of off or authority, right? Which AUTH is like the shorthand for it. Up to $5,000 you could settle on site with, right? So if you're like, oh, this is a fence and the grill cover, right? Grill cover's $100 and $1,200 worth of whatever it is, right? So it's a small claim, up to $5,000. You can write that one up on site and go back up to the front door, knock on it, and say, okay, I got this all put together for you. And for all the damages we found, your roof looks great. There's nothing wrong with it. The damages to the fence and the grill, grand total is this, deductible is that, depreciation is this, and if it's like State Farm or a company that wants you to write checks, which some do still, probably not very likely, but maybe, right? Maybe you hand them a check, or you set up an ACH or something like that, and they have a system that you get into, whatever it is, right? You settle up with that one, you leave the house, you're done with it, right? From there, you'll do a few of those, and obviously not every one of your next claims is going to be $0 to $5,000. It's going to be whatever, right? $0 to $50,000. Anything over $5,000, you got to take it back to your manager. So in the meantime, as you're doing other estimates, they'll get to the point where they feel comfortable letting you fly solo. So then they'll give you $10,000 or $15,000 of settlement authority. For most adjusters, settlement authority is going to top out at 25. But if you've been with them for a while, and they trust you, and you've been on half a dozen storms with them, they may kick that up to 50. Claims that were bigger than that were typically commercial claims, and you had to get a manager to sign off on those anyway, because the manager's authority is only $100,000. And if I have a $1.2 million loss, then neither one of us have the authority to settle that with the insured without going through the carrier and having the carrier go through fine-tooth comb through your estimate, all the photos and everything, and making sure that it's perfect, and then giving you the thumbs up on it. And then you can go and take a gigantic check and sit down with the owner of the, Whispering Willows apartment complex and say, here you go, right, with a copy of all the estimates for each building. So that's kind of like the progression from brand spanking new, 0 claims under your belt, half a dozen or so, just to show that you've got this, that you can figure it out, right? Because there's going to be things that no training can teach you, some of the things that you're going to have to learn. You get those things figured out, your manager's comfortable with you. Small claims up to $5,000. Once they get more and more comfortable with you, then they'll raise that, right? But if you have a claim, like you've got authority up to $5,000, but not more than that, and then you have a $12,000 claim, you still have to say, I'm still going to write it all up at the house, whole thing, except for the settlement diary entry. And your manager may tell you that you need to do the whole thing and send them the whole file, and then they'll give you authority, and then you settle up with the insured. But I'm going to still do that before I leave the house, because it's still going to have the benefit of picking up missed measurements, missed photos, and that kind of thing, right? Having the insured come over and knock on the window. But when I leave the house, what I say to the insured is, okay, I got everything I need. I'm going to take this back to the office, and I will give you a call back. Today's Monday. I should be able to get back in touch with you by the end of the day on Wednesday, knowing full well in your mind that you can absolutely, your manager's Johnny on the spot with this, and you'll have an answer by the end of today or tomorrow morning. You know that you can call that insured back way before end of day on Wednesday, right? You want to set expectations that you can always easily beat, right? And it may be a little bit of trial and error figuring that out, but generally, you give it a few days. Even if if today was Monday and you said, well, I will have an answer for you by the end of this week, and the insured kind of gets a little grumpy or, whatever. You're still going to call them on Tuesday or Wednesday, and they're going to be delighted because they thought they were going to have to wait till the end of the week, but you call them, right? Surprise and delight. Setting an expectation. And if you go beyond that, if you told them that you'd call back on Friday and you don't, and it's like the middle of the following week, that person's going to chew your ear off through the phone. And rightfully so. And look, this whole system only works if you've actually started down the path to becoming an adjuster. So if you're still wondering what licenses to get, what gear you need, or how in the world to land your first deployment, I put together a full roadmap that walks you through the entire journey from 0 to working adjuster. And you can check that out in this video right here. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great storm.